As you know, I've been talking about real estate a lot in our economy and markets articles in the last several weeks. There's a lot of coverage in the media because there's a lot going on. And I think this is an important area for another reason. I've always said, since early 2009, we've had unprecedented bubbles all before that in stocks and real estate and all around the world. This is a bubble era. And they started to crash in 2008, but then government stepped in, with central bank printing money out of nowhere, now up to $15 trillion and still rising, and just throwing that into the financial systems and markets and creating bubbles and everything and stock buybacks and all this sort of stuff. This is an artificial bubble, which makes it even more dangerous and more treacherous when it does finally burst. But I've always said, look, there obviously in this era, and unlike any time in history, is no end to how much governments and central banks are willing to stimulate to keep this bubble going precisely because they know how bad it's going to be when it bursts. Nobody wants a bubble to burst under their tenure as president or prime minister of a country or central bank chairman or whatever. So this is going to continue. What kills a bubble like this, even with so much government backing, is the bubble itself. That they create bubbles that are unsustainable. And the stock market can go to more extremes than real estate. The reason is most people don't own stocks that much. And the stock market doesn't affect them that much, their jobs or anything. Real estate affects people directly. It used to be 67% of people, and now still 62% of people own their own home. And mortgage rates and the price of those homes affect them directly. Home and construction and that whole industry is the largest in the country. So its booms and busts affect the economy very directly. The cost of rents, which are now, and I've showed in recent articles, in more and more cities, making people spend 30, 40% of their income just on their rent or on their mortgage payments, which crowds out everything else and makes life hard to live decently. Real estate is the first limit that says if you allow this to keep bubbling up and make it unaffordable in more and more cities to buy and make it less and less affordable to rent, and then mortgage rates finally go up when governments have to reverse their zero interest rates policies, which ultimately they will, and the U.S. has been the first to do this, this thing comes down. So real estate's important to watch because it may be the first bubble that starts to work against this bubble economy and say there's a limit to this. And already there's a shortage of homes for sale. People are still into buying, but the prices are turning them off. The higher mortgage rates are turning them off. The biggest foreign buyers like the Chinese are now backing off in the United States and even in places like Australia and in London. High-end markets are cracking. I also been warning that this bubble in real estate will crack this time on the high end and work its way down. Last time, it was the subprime lending fiasco that caused the bubble to start bursting on the low end with defaults and foreclosures and then work its way up to the high end. So this real estate bubble is likely to be the first to burst, maybe even before stocks, and to lead the next downturn. And they did last time. Remember, in early 2006, real estate prices peaked and started to go down and crack slowly and then accelerated in the Great Recession. But they were going down into it. They helped trigger it. I got 2 calls within 1 hour in the middle of the night from Australia, one from my normal promoter, Greg Owen at GoCo there, who's done a wonderful job for me, and then a whole nother promotion company called me. Why? Real estate prices are cracking even in Sydney, Australia. And in Australia, it's the perfect market. They, unlike the rest of the developed world, it's not just low interest rates and all this sort of stuff. They have strong demographics from high quality immigration. There is no reason. Their economy is not weak. Their government is not running unprecedented deficits and debt ratios and stuff like we have in the U.S. and Europe. This is the perfect market, and it's starting to crack because it's simply too expensive. There are limits to bubbles. So I'll be covering that more. I'll also be covering, look forward just ahead, the new strategy. This is I've seen this just recently. The new strategy is for people living in expensive cities like San Francisco or Manhattan or downtown Miami or wherever, the most bubble cities. You rent in your bubble city and you save your credit and your borrowing capacity to buy single family homes in non-bubbly cities, more in the middle of the country and everyday areas. And you make strong cash flow returns on that. That's the opposite. Most people want to own their main home and they would never think of renting that out. This is the opposite. Where real estate is appreciating rapidly, you can't make good money on rents. They work against each other. People have to make it on appreciation, and that's going to end. The areas that aren't appreciating are not bubbly, and people can't afford as much. That's where you make money renting with solid people. And you make more money in single family homes than you do in apartments because you have better, higher quality, longer tenants. So again, I think real estate's really interesting now. It is starting to show signs of shifting. So is the stock market with more volatility and stuff. But real estate is looking like it's cracking first. Again, you need to get your strategy straight personally and in your business and consider, how do you make money in this downturn? Because there's no better way to make money than buying real estate when it's going down, especially real estate for cash flow rentals.